Hey, Clay Allison from Wicked Edge. A question we get all the time is whether or not you can sharpen a really small knife like this in any of our sharpeners. And the short answer is yes. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through how you do it in both our standard jaws with the WE100 and WE120, and in our camlock jaws that are available in the WE130 and the Gen 3 Pro, and the Pro Pack 3. Okay, so this knife is pretty teeny. It measures about 2 inches long and about 3/8 of an inch high in terms of the blade height there. So pretty small on the grand scheme of things for how to sharpen in one of our sharpeners. But it is possible. And the first thing that you're going to want to do is take the little screw that ships with your WE100 or WE120. There's always this little extra screw in here, and this is exactly what it's for, and replace the top screw in your vise. And the reason you do that is you don't want the screw to poke all the way through to the outside of the vise and provide interference with the stones, because we're going to be working with very small angles here, and we're trying to get as much clearance as we can. Then you'll take the original top screw and you'll replace the bottom screw with the original top screw. And the reason is that we don't want the head of the screw poking out the back of the vise on this side. Again, we want to minimize any type of interference that we get. So once I've replaced those screws like that, I can just simply set my knife in the vise and clamp it as high up as possible in the clamp. I am completely disregarding the depth settings to do this, because if I were to use the depth key, the vise would almost swallow up the knife entirely. The good thing is that these knives usually have like a little thumb groove here that I can use as an index feature, so that when I want to repeat the same settings on the knife, I've got something to index with. So that's basically what I'm doing, is just lining up the top of the jaws with that little thumb groove. Push it up as high as I can there and lock it in place. And with that, I actually have quite a lot of clearance. I easily clear the jaws, no problem. I've got my angle set to 16 degrees, which is going to actually give me about a 17.4 degree sharpening angle. And that's, again, because the height of the knife is well below the 5/8 that we're standardized for above the top of the jaws. So I'll turn this around, let's see if you can see that. Yeah, so 16.25 degrees there. It's pretty great actually for such a small knife. And that's how you're going to want to set it up in your standard jaws, just as high up as you can, and lock it in. Index with something on the knife like the thumb groove is really helpful. If there's nothing on the knife that you can index with, just take a photo of the knife from the profile and you'll be able to use that to line it up again in the future. Alright, now I'm going to show you how to sharpen this same knife in any of the sharpeners that have the camlock jaws. So that's the WE130, the Pro Pack 3, or the Gen 3 Pro. If you've got that set of jaws, then your considerations are just a little bit different, because they're wider from front to back than the standard jaws are. The camlock jaws are 1.5 inches, whereas the standard jaws are 1 inch. And that has an impact because the shortness of the blade length means that there's a little bit more interference with the wider jaws. It's not a big difference, but it does limit our angle a tiny bit. So again, I'm just going to set the knife in here as high up as I can, aligning the thumb groove to the top of the jaws, and lock it in place. That's a very firm lockup. I can actually pick up the whole sharpener just by the blade there. So I'm very confident that I've got enough grip, even clamped so high up. And what I've found with this knife is that about 18 degrees on the graduation plate is appropriate. I've still got clearance between the stone and the jaws if I get down here and look through there for a little gap. And my angle cube is reading 19.1, it's fluctuating a little bit, 19.2. If I turn that around, hopefully you can see that. Yeah, there you go, 19.1 degrees. And so the reason for the difference is that the knife, instead of being 5/8 above the tops of the jaws, like the vices are calibrated for, this one's riding lower in the jaws. So we're an angle, 1 degree angle higher than what the graduation plate here says. But that's how you can clamp and sharpen a very small knife in your camlock jaws, whether that's a Gen 3 Pro, WE130, or Pro Pack 3.